And we are live with Hao Peng. Hao, welcome to the program, and sorry for all that technical hoop jumping, but you and I got through it.
Yeah, we did. Well, thank you for inviting me to this. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
I feel like we should give ourselves gold stars no matter how this turns out, just for figuring out the technology for you and I to actually be on the call talking without echoes and with the all the technology working. So
Of course, of course.
gold stars for both of us.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
I take that.
So you are spent time in AI, and it's your primary focus has been in AI. And so I'm going to throw you a question that to start out the conversation that might seem like a softball, but it's not. What is AI? I talk to CIOs and different executives, and they say everybody who walks in their door tells them that the new thing they're doing is AI. So what does the AI even mean in today's world?
Yeah, that's it's a good start. I think if you're talking, as you say, if you're talking with different people, they maybe give you different answers, especially in these days. I think the AI was interchanged with a lot of other things, especially generative AI. So if that's okay with you, I'm going to bring a couple of terminology here because I heard a lot for the people talking through because there are some subtle differences between them. So for example, back to the original question, what is AI? I would say the broadest terms, the AI is reference to kind of a collection of the techniques or technologies that is enable machine to demonstrating human-like intelligence. So when I say human-like intelligence, what that means? Think about learning, think about resilience, think about problem solving, or maybe decision making, right? So that would be probably the highest level definition about AI. And then if I can just bring out a couple more terminology there, is you probably heard about machine learnings. So what the heck is machine learning? I would say machine learning is actually a subset of AI, which kind of it's a technique that helping enable the machine learning through the large sums of data. That's what that is. The next two items is going to be the deep learnings. Deep learnings is really another subset of machine learnings, right? The learning from the data enable the machine learning from the data through artificial neural networks and kind of inspired by the human brains. The last but not the least, you hear a lot of recently in the last couple of years the large language models. Well, large language models such as GPT from OpenAI or Gemini from the Google, it's actually a subset of deep learnings that based on the specific transformer architectures and for how they are developing and learning themselves. Does it make sense? I might go too deep.
No, I think what you're saying, makes sense. You're talking architectures, you're talking the chat GPTs. You touched just a little bit maybe on the something that many of us hear about, the like deep fakes and generative AI. And I wanted to ask you about that. And we'll talk about all these areas because I'm going to ask you about tools in just a little bit. But I was actually reading that many countries around the world are now using generative AI as part of their political strategies and how they deal with either from a war perspective or from a messaging perspective with allies. They are creating these deep fakes or generative AI. And so one question I have is, are businesses using generative AI in that same way for messaging and for, making themselves or their products look better than they are, or as the marketing spin on things? Do you know is that happening yet or not?
I would say from the AI standpoint, the business has already adopted a lot of technologies in the last number of years, right? And then I can just kind of quickly go through some of the things that's happening in the last few years, and then we can go into some of the use cases in generative AI, if that's okay with you. So for example, you probably heard about the predictive analytics, right? There has been a concept in there for a long time. So really on a high level is you kind of leveraging some large amount of the historic data, and then you want to, based on this data, predicting the future outcomes, right? Think about the demand forecasting, think about the risk assessments or targeted marketing and the campaigns. And then the next one is probably more relevant to generative AI is related to the natural language processing, right? The thing about that, you want to looking for the data that either being in the form of a customer reviews, so it can be a social media postings, or can be kind of a support inquiries, right? So the NLP, also knowing natural language processing, is enable an application like the sentiment analysis. Think about is a positive review versus a negative review. So the chatbots, right? Or automated content generations, like that you generate the marketing contents. And also, you probably heard about the computer visions. Think about that facial recognitions, right? So most of us using our phone on our hands, right? So when you unlock the phones, what's behind that is really the AI mechanism to identify you are the who you say you are, and then they can unlock the phone. And sometimes they can use in some of the defect detections, right, in the manufacturer settings, identify is there a defect in the products, so we can identify them before they ship to customers. Last but not least is this, you probably heard a lot about self-driving cars, right? Those are things they're using some of the CNN, which is another network architecture for the AI and machine learnings to enable self-learnings. And then be able to drive themselves. I know that technology itself is not maturing to the point that it's fully automated yet, but it's something that's a future direction to go. And that's kind of on the high levels where kind of some use cases using right now.
Yeah.
But then back to the questions you have there is to what the things that they're using today, and that it's really using the generative AI. So I kind of touched a little bit earlier in a lot of things happening in the last 12 months is really involving the natural language processing, right? So think about the, you want to generate the marketing contents for the products, right? In the past, you have a dedicated marketing departments, they generate the product description for yours. A lot of time they require a lot of manual steps, and sometimes there are some technology happening that you can actually uploading the images, and then the generative AI technologies you can upload into the and they can leverage in technology and be able to describing marketing product descriptions that you can posting to that versus automatically at scales versus manually. You can have some customers, right? Instead of you may have a team of customer services working through. You want to get a summaries what's happening with my customer services interactions in the last 30 days versus yesterday versus the last past week. Give me a summaries of those, and so you will be able to go through the transcript of those interactions, and you'll be able to get a good summaries of what the interaction then looks like. That's kind of a very high level use cases. Is there any specific things you want to dive in a little more? Or
well, I wanted to ask you. You had mentioned the phones, which we're all familiar with, and how it does facial recognition. 15 years ago, movies were showing retina scanners, and before you could get into the next door on the space, your retina would have to be scanned and you'd walk through the space door. Maybe that was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Today, that's kind of happening with our phones. Is the level of detail when my phone's looking at my face, is it actually looking at things like my retina, like the difference in how many brown spots I have on my retina versus the blue of my eyes? Or is it just general face shapes? Like how advanced, do you know how advanced is that technology related to how the camera works and how AI interacts with that? I have a twin brother. I don't want him on my phone because he's a troublemaker. So that's why I asked this question.
Yeah, and I have to admit that I'm not an expert for some of the visions, machine learnings experts. But I have to say that, when the machine looking at you, right, a lot of time, especially in the high volume objects around the machines, they don't looking at a lot of colors like the what we saw in the real world. A lot of the machines looking at it is a very basic 256 color schemes. And what they're looking for when they look in the facials, they're looking for not only for your eyes, but also how everything in your facial in the digital, they transform the data and what they see in the images into the data point itself. And then that will be the data they're using for comparison to what you have. And then they want to, they're using some of the probably a highly complex mechanism behind that to calculate what's the probability. You are the people's what are versus someone else?
Yeah.
But that's a really good question. And I'm sure there's a lot more detailed algorithms behind that, the complex algorithm behind that to enable it.
So I don't want to gain a lot of weight quickly or use new glasses because I might get locked out of everything I own. That's kind of the
Right.
summary.
Well,
Yeah.
this is the fear is that, I don't know what's going to happen if I get to not unlock my phones, right? Because of
Right. My
half my
phone
life is
and
there.
it impacts my laptop, everything else. What about, so you had mentioned ChatGPT, and again, I think many of us are using ChatGPT once in a while at the very least.
Mhm.
Are there other tools out there that are as common in AI as ChatGPT? You'd mentioned in the deep learning space. How are people using AI to better understand their data, and what is it doing? It's crawling data and it's coming back and saying, hey, you've got a pocket of people in Tasmania that happen to be ordering your most
Yeah.
expensive product. What kind of things is AI doing for people?
Yeah. So I was just going to give you the first, probably most relevant use cases a lot of people using. So I would say most people using search capability one way or another, right? Almost every day. And you guys probably know that when you go to Google, typing what the search happening be underneath them most of the time is what they call a keyword search, right? What the latest AI development, the generative AI developments happening is enable what they call semantic search. So which will be allowing more accurate, more relevant research results based on semantic meaning of the question we're asking. When I say semantic meaning of the question, what does that mean? So for example, and I can searching for weather.com to say, what is the weather in July in Norway, Europe, right? That's by accident. That's the places I'm going to be actually traveling in the summer, in July specifically. Instead of what I do searching like those, what I can ask the question is, maybe I really don't like cold weather, so where I'm going. So what I can ask the question is, does the weather ever dipping below 0 degrees in Norway in July? Well, I think about that, right? So I actually did a search like this through the Microsoft Bings, which is enable some of the personalized co-pilots response. I get a perfect results to that. So lock and wood, they said, in July, you will not having any situations like weather dipping under zero degrees, right? And you think about that means for the search engine giants like Google. So 80% of the revenue is derived from their advertising alone, right? So you can think about how much that can potential impact Google's revenues if everybody overnight switching from the keyword-based searching to semantic-based searching, right? So that would be one of the levels that one of the use cases then where I see generative AI will have a profound impact and it's changing how people are doing every day.
But like for Google, they can still the data from just your voice or your text string query. They're still going to know that they can be popping up ads for down jackets and new boots
Absolutely.
and trekking poles and whatever else people would be doing in Europe, right? I mean, that'll still be in play for advertisers.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Absolutely. Google is catching up with this, right? So is their competitive advantage to have all the tremendous data on their end? But the things is shifting right now. So they got to catching up. I think this is where probably the future of the searching is that transition from the keyword based searchings, which is not going to be going away, right? And also into kind of semantic level searching. How do they actually embedding their advertising business as part of their searching is going to be really interesting, not only for the search engine like Google's, but also think about content creators, right? Think about CNN, the advertising on their website. Right now, if those information was generalized and surfacing through the co-pilots or through the Google searching more semantic way, they're different. Think about what that would be hacks to the content creators.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know what Microsoft Copilot is, they basically took Clippy from 30 or 20 years ago and they've turned that into their new AI thing. And it's very powerful. Everything I hear from people is it's a fantastic AI aided device. One last question for you, Hao. I hear a lot about developers, software engineers starting to use different tools for building out their own code sets. And so how far are we, in your opinion, from AI taking over development? So flat out, you just being able to go online and say, I want to build an e-commerce system where I'm going to be selling jackets and shoes and things, and having an AI code base being set and implementing that for you. Are we close? Have you heard of anything like that?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
So I'm going to be first to caveat my answer here is just totally my views here, right? So I think the answer is somewhere is, the automation of the code development is coming, right? So, but there always will be needs for the what we call human involvement, right? But the role of the human engagement is likely going to be evolving in the coming years until reaching certain levels, right? So I think that Thomas Dukes, I think he's a GitHub CEO. And he predicts that sooner or later, 80% of the code is going to be written by co-pilots or some kind of a code automation generation tools. And it's amazing thing. By end of last year, I believe in the GitHub itself, more than almost 50% of the code is the AI generated already. So think about that. And in the span of less than 1 year, so the code used to be generated manually, be almost overnight, half of them is already generated by the AI. And so that's how fast the progress in this one area is. But he also mentioned that the role of a developer is not going to be replaced. What's going to happen is the switch into what he called the system thinking, right? So the understanding the complex of software and be able to get really understand the challenges related to that and be able to decompose them into a small problem, right? This is going to play an ever increasing role. So back to the question you have there is are we ever going to have this, no code environments that you can push a code and be able to generate the code base? I would say likely will be minimal code, minimal and code required to do that. But I was saying there's always will be some role where the human involvement is going to be. But in the next 5 years, what we're doing software development activity today, I envision that it will be drastically different, and mostly due to rapid advancement of the co-automation tool like Copilots. That are my predictions. I'm holding my breath on those. I really I think there's a lot of bright futures coming up in this area. So we have to say.
How in 5 years I'm going to have you back on the show, and we are going to see if your prediction comes true. Hao Peng, thank you so much for your time. Have a great day. And for everyone else out there, you are watching the vodcast. Thanks, Hao.
Thanks for inviting me again. Have a good day.